You're watching Analysts After Dark, an underground hideaway where insatiably curious analysts examine provocative project problems, share salacious secrets, and establish a covert network of co-conspirators. Step into the dark with your hosts, AJ Hawley and Steve Jones.
Well, welcome to Analysts After Dark.
We've
been expecting you.
Expecting everybody.
We have a lot of exciting stuff to catch up on. It's been a little while, Steve, since we've hung out on here.
Yeah, February?
I think so. I looked it up right before this episode. I was like, yeah, I think it was February. And, took a couple months off, had some things that we needed to address, but we'll talk all about that today for sure. So things have been going pretty well on your end, I understand. So you've been traveling a little bit. You've been doing some workshops, some sessions.
Yep.
Talk about that for a second.
Well, this was my first time actually on a plane in 15 years.
Okay.
So it was exciting. Got to travel up to Toronto for Project World, Business Analyst World, and had a fantastic time. Learned so much from all the different sessions and connecting with all the speakers. It was just fantastic. And I got to really enjoy doing a presentation, the workshop that I do with Jen Bedell. And it was such a fantastic time. Came out energized.
What was your presentation on?
Communication.
Okay.
So the title of our session is Communication is Easy. Why is it so hard? Because we're all talking. We all have words, but they don't always land right. And they don't always have the right impact for what you're trying to have done.
So what's the takeaway from that session?
Takeaway, intentionality.
Okay.
Be a lot more intentional with the words that you're using. Mistakes happen, so definitely try to be a little more patient with others. Know who your audience is. Be aware of who you're talking to.
Makes sense.
There's different levels, absolutely, but the amount of detail that is necessary for each level is different. But it's basically assess who you're talking with, who you're communicating with, and there's a lot more. I wasn't ready for that, but we have a lot of fun. It's enjoyable, and I don't know how, but after a 6-hour workshop, I was energized when I was done.
Very nice.
I was still giddy and bouncing around.
Yeah. I think so. I was also there in Toronto and got to see you, which is the first time I've seen you outside of Boston, I think ever, right?
Yep.
But it sounds like the first time you've been outside of Boston in a little while as well.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a fantastic time. It was amazing. And I heard you've been doing some travels too.
I did. So I was in Toronto, I was in Orlando, and in DC. So I actually headed back to Toronto here in the next couple of weeks for a different conference series, but still going to have a lot of fun with it though.
Excellent.
A little bit different audience, but it should be a lot of fun. It should be, I'm doing 2 different sessions. One's a workshop on creating PowerPoint presentations, which it sounds weird that we're having those conversations now with so much AI involvement, but I think that there's still so much to learn about just the tool itself and just what we can use to make things better. One of my pet peeves is seeing those little, I think they're called bubble people. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're just they're little faceless heads and bodies, and every time I see one of those, a part of my soul dies for some reason. So
lacks creativity.
Well, it's just there, and while they may communicate a point, it's the most probably blasé, I don't know, image that you can use.
There's a lot more options out there.
Yeah. So then now with generative AI, we can do so much more fun stuff and say, here's exactly what I want. I want to have an image of DJ Cat that's on a volcano with pterodactyls, and you get to see that, and then now that's your image
And
or
it's a lot
whatever
of fun seeing the results.
it is. I did one for a woman that was very frustrated looking at a calendar, and I put 4 or 5 different prompts in there. The hands are always the ones that like give away with AI, because either they have 27 fingers or
Yep.
they're just like one hand, and or one hand with no fingers, and it's all kind of gelled together. So that's it. That giveaway.
So using AI is part of the easy work, but all that traveling and all those sessions, that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
How do you deal with all that?
Well, I think that's going to be the main point of today's conversation is burnout. So that's part of the reason why we were, we'll say, off air for a little while, recuperating, just because we had so much going on both individually and collectively that it was hard to get new speakers on this show, new audience members, focus on all the things that we have to with blogs and all the things that kind of make this thing go. And it was one of the unfortunately easiest things to sit back on and say, well, if I don't do that, is that going to be massive heartbreak to anybody? I don't know. Who knows? And so I think it was the first thing that I could step away from for a moment and not necessarily feel like the whole world was crashing if it didn't happen. There weren't the ramifications of it, since it's not something that we get necessarily paid to do, or we get any sort of, it's not part of our job responsibilities. It was easy to kind of say, well, if we step back from this for a second, is it going to be okay?
Yeah. And how will it benefit us by stepping away for a short time?
Yeah.
Because you do this on top of working.
Yeah. So I have actually, I think, several jobs. I don't know if it's several jobs or if it's several things. But like, let's just jump into it. So I'm kind of a commitaholic. If somebody says, AJ, I need you to do this, I'm the first person to go, sure. And then, especially if it's, a couple of weeks out, because I'll be like, yeah, I don't have any plans then. That's fine. And then I realize that, oh yeah, by the way, somebody else scheduled something else, something else came up. I've got this other thing, and then now it's crunch time. And so then I'll spend 36 hours pretty much in this room straight, building out a presentation or building something for a demo, some sort of product build, a go live, whatever it is. And then it's, oh man, that was, we're through it. But at the same time, you look at next week and then there's 2 more of those kind of events. Like, oh. So the burnout happens kind of quickly. So yeah, I do this. I have my own consulting business. So I think, in that alone, you're doing the sales, you're doing the implementation, you're doing the support, you're kind of all of the one person that somebody needs. So there's a lot of context switching on a regular basis.
And context switching by itself, doing enough that can burn you out even quicker, let alone all the other responsibilities that you're dealing with.
Well, that's right. So we lose about 20% productivity every time that we context switch. So if I go from doing, let's say, expenses and billing to implementation work to sales, those are all different aspects of my brain that my tasks need, right? So then I go in and if I'm doing billing work, it needs to be detailed, it's structured, it's very, very, if I mess it up, there are ramifications of doing that, right? So you have to be very precise with that. I'm doing implementation work that's more creative because I'm doing something I'm coming up with a solution. I'm problem solving. I'm strategic in that. And then the other thing that I mentioned, which I even forget now, all sales. So then that becomes a personality thing, right? So then that becomes your own. I need to sell this. I'm the expert in this tool. I'm the expert in this process. I know exactly how to get you from A to B. And then that's a whole separate part of your brain as well. So like all three of those things require different elements to make you successful in that. And you can't really go from one to the other without kind of spinning down and spinning back up.
So what kinds of things were impacting you from a symptom perspective? How did you know you were burning out?
That's a great question. There's a lot of stuff when it comes to signs of burnout. So I think the first thing that happens, and it's not just me, it's just anybody, but it's a physical aspect, right? So when you're looking at that, you just constantly feel drained. When you leave the office or power down your computer at the end of the day, you just feel like you've ran a marathon, even though you've probably been sitting most of the day, right? That constant feeling of just, I have no energy left to go to the gym, to make dinner, to go shopping after work, whatever the tasks are that you've got, like you have no energy into that. That's one of the first signs. And then if that's a persistent item, then it goes into stuff like stress eating. So you can go into that. So then you don't even realize that you've had a whole bag of chips, 2 sodas, and 3 candy bars just kind of to get through the 3 o'clock nap time rush, right?
Oh, it's 3 o'clock.
Well, yeah,
Just 3 o'clock.
just 3 o'clock.
Or the midnight Taco Bell run.
Well, that's a different problem, which we may or may not address on this show, but definitely not today. But I think that there's a lot of to be said about the whole stress eating, right? Or even not eating. People realize that I have a friend of mine who, very similarly, she does the opposite. So I'm more of the stress eater. So then I just want to consume all of the calories that are around. And she's the opposite. She goes, "Oh, I haven't eaten in like 27 hours. I should probably eat something." And she just gets so engrossed in the work that she's doing that it's hard for her to step away. And luckily for her, she has a great partner, and her partner, he always makes food for her, says, "Hey, you need to step away from this. Here's some dinner," and he's a solid cook too, so it works out. But it's one of those things that you kind of have to have people around you to take care of you.
And that definitely helps.
Yeah. That sleep patterns change, right? So then I tend to be a night owl, and so then this exacerbates that. So then I'll stay up until 2 o'clock getting stuff done until I'm completely wiped that I can't keep my eyes open, and then I'll go to bed, and then I wake up and I need to sleep in because if you add in the 8 hours, well then now you're already into late morning, right? So like, okay, well then that's 10 o'clock before I start my day, and that seems late, especially if you've got clients that are looking to get started early, right? So
Yep.
all of it kind of builds into that physical. That's what your body's telling you, and also you get sick more easily. I think that I found that a couple times where when I've been super super stressed, that's the times that I caught COVID both times. I was under a lot of pressure to do a couple different things and quickly. And so then my body just says, nope, you don't have any of the antibodies to fight anything else.
So when you're run down like that, the work becomes harder too, right?
Well, I think you don't have any sort of resilience physically to that, right? So the work isn't harder. It's just maintaining the what's the word? I don't know. Not, I guess endurance. I think that's the easiest way to say that. That just maintaining the endurance to go through and say, I can do 2 more days of this or 3 more days of that, and after that, So I think that there's the physical aspects of it. Your mood definitely changes too. You tend to get those mood swings where you start out and or very irritable. Something triggers you, and you're just, oh my gosh! And something that would have been small that you would have just looked over and said, oh yeah, no big deal, is something that now you'll realize, why am I so angry about this one stupid thing? It's the dishwasher, or it's the laundry, or it's like something completely silly that you're like, this is not a big deal overall. But then you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this always happens all the time, every day. And you're obviously that can't be true at all. I think that the Sunday scaries, ever have those where it's Sunday and you're looking at like 4 o'clock and you're like, oh man, only 5 more hours till I go to bed, and then I have to go to work tomorrow, and then just looking at your day and counting down to getting the Sunday scaries is a big sign of potential burnout. What about you? Do you ever kind of suffer from that or ever experience that?
For me, the Sunday scaries are definitely when I'm trying to go to sleep.
Mm,
Normally, I can fall asleep within 5 minutes. When I start getting burned out, I definitely notice the impact to my ability to fall asleep, the quality of my sleep, and
yeah,
then waking up. It can be a constant brain fog. So that's why I asked the question about work becomes harder, because if you've got the brain fog from impacted sleep, trying
that's
to
fair.
do the normal work that you're used to, especially knowledge worker, when you're supposed to be thinking critically, having quality interactions with people. If you didn't sleep, you're just in a fog,
Yeah,
and like you said, you end up losing perspective on different issues, and sometimes they blow up
sure.
because you're just not in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, I think the same thing happens too when you are trying. After a little while, your behavior completely changes, and then you end up either doing well, the quality of your work suffers, right? Just from all those things, because you
Yep.
can't keep spinning those plates. You can't keep all that effort going to, well, here's all the things that I've got going on. How do I compartmentalize those? They just all have to happen. If they all have a deadline, there's no way to get them all done. And so I think that you end up, the quality of your work suffers. And then at that point, you almost do like a complete withdrawal. So it's just complete apathy of, all right, well, this is the way it is, and I don't care, you know. Um, so I find that those elements of the burnout are, it's not just, me or us, or it's a lot of people. We're in a lot of different, it happens in a lot of different industries. It tends to happen a lot in IT work, in the medical field, the knowledge space, right? But I think it happens everywhere else as well.
True.
It's one of those things that I think more is being demanded of us as individuals than has previously been the case. And I do find it funny when people mention the quiet quitting, right? So everyone's like,
Yep.
you hear bosses or you hear read articles about it where it's like everyone's quiet quitting right now, and really what they're doing is just their job, just what's mandated of them,
Yeah.
and not doing 30% extra on top of that. And it's like, well, good for them, good for that individual that's just saying, nope, here's my boundary, and here's exactly where I'm going to stay, and here's where I'm not going to stay. I do enjoy reading those stories.
And it's good to have an organization or a manager that expects just 40.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a 40-hour a week person, or even if you're salary, it's a lot tougher to have a balance if the expectation is 50 plus hours a week. Well,
Well,
it's not a balance anymore.
and I don't understand where the change happened from salary to 50 hours a week. Like if you're salaried, then the basic deal was between the two of you. You will provide me as the employer. You will provide me with 40 hours worth of work. I will show up and do 40 hours worth of work as an employee. And like that's the whole thing. When companies are like, oh no, you need to be here for 50 or 60 hours, it's like, no, I don't get paid for that. You know?
Or they give you so much with the expectation that you get this
Yeah.
much done by the end of the week, and clearly it's not just 40 hours worth of work.
Right. And so I think that we have opportunities, and I think I mentioned this in one of my talks in Washington, was that if you work 4 hours over your schedule, so let's say you work 44 hours of the week, you just decreased your pay by 10%. Like, that's crazy, right? You work 60 hours a week, and then now that's definitely impacting that, right? So I think that there's a lot of expectation of trying to get as much out of somebody as possible, but I don't think that the return happens. I think we used to have pensions and different plans that will allow us to kind of be taken care of after we've left. And so if you've put the 20 years in or the 30 years into that organization, then now it made sense. But I think even like when you look at it now, it's like, well, people are leaving jobs in 3 and 5 years, and maybe 2 years. So if it's 5 years, that's a long-term employee at this point. And then
Wow.
if it's over, yeah, which is crazy, right? So if you've got people that are looking at finding new jobs, they're looking at getting a 10% or 15% bonus when they switch from A to B, because that's how the market works, right? If you've been at your job for 25 years, chances are that there's a person that's getting paid that just started out and they're getting paid the same or higher than you, which is unfortunate.
Yep. Although there are some companies that more recently, within the last year or so, are actually adjusting the existing employees to, at the very least, match people at the same level coming in that are making higher. They're doing that evaluation and realizing we want to keep people. So at the very least, we need to have equal pay
Right.
for people at the same level.
Right.
So people coming in being above that will drive people away very quickly. And it's not the new people coming in, it's the people with all the knowledge that have been there that get fed up and depart.
Sure. I've been in organizations where if one person left, if this one person left, that's it. Like they know all of the inner workings of the organization, and I don't know that organization would stay if that one person left. And I know for a fact that there have been organizations that I've worked for where if 2 or 3 of those people left, that's it. Like it folded up, close up shop. That's it. And it's strange to see how fragile some organizations can be because they're keeping the organizational structure lean. That goes back to our conversation on burnout. Because of that lean organization, we have to find ways to either get better faster, or do the amount of work the same amount of work that we have faster and in a more productive manner. And while I preach on that, I'm also my own biggest hypocrite in that regard too, because it's like, well, I can't automate everything, or I'm only one person, so then it's going to take me time to build the automation to do that, to then get the benefits of that at the end. But if I don't have time to build it, then I don't have time to do it. Even for this show, one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long time is, as soon as somebody comes in and they say, hey, we'd like to be on your show, then what I'd love to do is be able to say, when we book them, they get an email invite saying, hey, this is when you're on, or I create the episode and then it has the link for it, so they have that, and then a reminder a couple days out or a week out saying, here's the thing. I can do all those things. It's not hard. It's just that I have zero of the available time to dedicate to that. So instead, we do it the hard way, right? We manually write the email and saying, hey, and then every time I do it, I think, God, I could save so much time by automating this. And it just,
But I'm tired of doing it. I need a break.
well, no, it's just it's when do I get to it? Do I get to it, before I bill my next client on, the hours that I have worked? Because that's impactful. If I don't bill them, that means that I don't get paid. If I don't get paid, that means I don't have a house, which means that I don't care about automation or sending emails.
You got to find a balance.
Right.
And speaking of balance, so we've talked about the burnout
Mhm.
and the pain. What's something that you do on the other side to alleviate some of the stress
I mean,
or
obviously
enjoy?
drink, I think is no. uh, cheers, by the way. No, I think it's there's a lot of fun stuff. Yeah, nice. There's a lot of fun stuff that I'm trying to get engaged in. And part of the thing that I'm trying to do, I've got a meetup group here in the Tampa area that I casually run. But it's one of those things too where I'm involved in that because I want to do fun things, but then I also find myself the victim there. Where I say victim, such a harsh word. That's not the right word. But I find myself where I have to start that process where I'm finding the events and I'm coordinating that, and so it almost becomes its own separate job on top of that. When really, I just kind of want to go somewhere, like somebody invites me somewhere, and I just go there and I get to like escape. So like that would be kind of cool. So I've picked up golf recently. That's been one thing that's been nice. So
That'll be fun.
you're outside. Uh, the frustration level, it's a different frustration level
Yep.
because you're very angry at a very small item, and because it's not going where you want it to go. But I do find it's nice to be able to. You're out there for a couple hours. You're hanging out with somebody. You're dedicated to doing that event with that person or those people for that extended period of time. And I find that it's a nice outlet, right? And plus, you're outside. You're getting some vitamin D, like all of those
Yeah.
good things. You're in nature somewhat, so all of those good things that you kind of get out of just being outside and doing something physically active. You also get some of the camaraderie and things like that you may or not get, in the office when you're talking about projects or requirements or process maps or whatever.
Connecting outside of work. What's
Yeah,
that? You mean there's a benefit to that?
there's definitely benefits to that. Yeah, I think community is one of the things that we've probably not invested as much as a society, recently. I think of like my grandparents, right? So they were both parts of um, different social fraternities, right? So like the Masons and whatever. But like those are the things that, and they had dances and they had card games and they had all these different things that they were throwing almost every weekend that you could go and do. And I find that we've lost a lot of that, and like that would be kind of interesting to see come back a little bit, where we come back to organizations like that where they they'll throw a charity fundraiser for something else, but they play poker on every third Friday, or they do this. And so I'd be interested to see some of those things come back.
Some more community event type things.
Sure. Yeah, because I
Yeah,
mean,
a lot of that's fallen away.
do you talk to, like, I don't know, how often do you talk to your neighbors, for instance?
At least every other week, and we've got a few neighbors around, and actual conversation.
Yeah.
Each neighbor probably every other week, but that typically means once a week with somebody at least.
Sure.
And one of the things that my neighborhood has, when we moved here almost 7 years ago, we have a neighborhood walking Christmas party in
Okay.
December. And it's kind of a community event for our neighborhood. And 4 or 5 houses end up hosting each
Hmm.
year. And it's different houses. And at each house, there's like an appetizer or two and different special drink for each house. And it's a fantastic time. And we move like every half hour or 45
Okay.
minutes. There's a set schedule, and we have our timekeeper, and he keeps us honest, and we move as a group, and anywhere from 12 to 25 of us walking from house to house on the street. And there was one year we had 6 or 7 houses, so we were just absolutely packed full
Yeah.
by the fourth house, but we kept going and just kept enjoying. So that's a community event that we all get to enjoy, and that itself becomes a topic of conversation leading up to it as well as afterwards.
Yeah.
And that definitely helps with, sometimes people just forget how to have conversations.
Yeah.
So having a topic definitely helps.
And I think that's part of it is knowing your neighbors, being able to have that sense of community in something, right? And taking out, well, I think, to be honest, this is the best part about some of the conferences, right? We end up having a great community of people that we can talk to, and it doesn't matter if you're a speaker or an attendee, or doesn't matter either way. Like, I don't think, most of the speakers that I've seen hang around, like after hours, whatever, they're willing to talk to you about anything. They're pretty open folks that way, but they also are looking to help and looking to share ideas, etc. And then at the same time, we get a chance to talk to each other about, like, hey, what are you experiencing? And that sense of community is, in my mind, hard to find, in my
Yeah.
experience anyway, where people are willing to say, hey, by the way, I'm experiencing this on this project, or this in my career path. Is that normal? Just being able to ask that question, is that normal? And, may or may not be.
Yeah. And I think one of the things nowadays that helps is technology. So, for
Fun.
example, the event that you've created, where a group of us meet periodically from Tampa and Clearwater and Atlanta and Cleveland, Massachusetts, people from all over,
Hmm.
being able to talk in real time. I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, you're in Florida.
Yeah.
Being able to connect over vast distances in real time, it's amazing.
Sure.
And that helps.
And I think that creates a great digital community. I still think there's a lot of value in physical or locational community,
Absolutely.
where someone is close to you, you actually get a chance to, shake their hand and look them in the eye, and those things. And because, in a weird, humane way, those matter, right? When you can tell a lot by just, well, you've said this in multiple presentations, even in your communication presentation, about the percentage of communication that's verbal versus nonverbal.
Yep.
Right. So I
Well,
think,
for in-person communication, 7% is the words.
yep.
Everything else is nonverbal.
Right. And so
That
then
makes a
if you only get to
difference.
see this much of me,
Yep.
then you don't know if, like, my leg is tapping right now because I might be nervous or anxious or something like that. Right. So you can't read those body signs based on, you can only see, ear to hear. I
Well, you
think those
see
are
my
the things.
tagline.
What's that?
You see my tagline. I like to move it.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
just like you described, my knee is jiggling. I'm moving.
But you're also, um, a very, I don't know, excitable is the right word, but
Yeah.
you kind of feel the room and the vibe that's there, and then you respond to it physically. So if you're having fun and you're having a good time, you're kind of bouncing around, and doing something. Yeah. So, like, that's normal.
Me bouncing?
Yeah, right. Like a human Tigger, It's like,
Well, the first time we actually met in person was Boston. Was that last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And it was first time coming back to the conference after the break from COVID. And I was literally bouncing
Yeah.
I couldn't stand still. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't sit. I was just so excited to see people in person, to finally meet some of you in person.
Sure.
And, it was kind of my release from a little bit of burnout. Physical human contact. It was energizing.
Yeah, I think that's it. So going in, I think the first thing that we have to do is set up professional boundaries, right? So here's the things that I'm going to do or no longer going to do. I mentioned that in a little bit in my keynote in Washington, was like stop allowing occupation, and it's there, but also I'm when I'm speaking to anybody, I'm speaking to myself just as much as I am anybody else. It's like I know that I have to do these things. I put this into a slide because this is a great reminder for me, and I know what the ramifications are because I live them. So I think putting those boundaries on our work schedules is a great way. And then the good news about some of the new tech is that it allows us to do that automatically. So like I have my do not disturb come on at 10 p.m. every day, and then it doesn't matter like what happens. I don't get an alert, right? I might check my phone and I see things, but I don't get an alert. Same thing with email. You can set that up in your email. You can set that up in your Teams messages. If you have that on your phone. And so here's my quiet hours, and then your quiet hours could start at 5 p.m. and end, until 8 a.m. the next day. If they do, fantastic, good for you. If they should, but I think that's the first step is creating professional boundaries. And then the next step is, like you were suggesting, finding a community of individuals that are either like-minded but it's a completely different aspect of your career.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but a lot of my favorite things to do are still here at the computer. So I'm still like learning things, but I'm like, I'm not doing work, but I'm still in the same office. I'm still in the same computer. I'm still in the same spot. So that's kind of part of the reason I've got these lights on and whatever, just because those lights make it like a more fun environment to hang out. But yeah, so like I'll be doing photo editing or video editing or something like that because I find that fun and cathartic in a lot of ways. And so that tends to be a creative outlet. But I'm still sitting here on my computer, and so what I'm trying to do is find physical things to do outside, or um, I've been focusing on physical fitness a little bit, and then working out in the gym and so on. So like that's been a nice outlet, I think.
I love dogs. And we actually just adopted a new dog over the weekend. So we have a new rescue, Sabrina. She's very sweet. Our existing dog. So we now have two.
Mm-hmm.
I love dogs. So for me, getting away from the keyboard,
Yeah,
getting away from the screen, and being able to just chill with the dogs is one of the things that helps me. And doing it along with the rest of the family. So for me, it's stepping away from the screen, stepping away from the keyboard. We try to find movies or TV shows that we can all watch and enjoy. With a son who likes his Xbox a lot, it's tougher to kind of connect at times. But when he does, when we find a show that kind of gets a little hook
yeah,
after we've watched it a few times, he'll start to join us, and then it's the whole family and the dogs. It's nice. So it's all connecting. We have our own little community in the house where we're actually enjoying our company.
sure.
That helps. That for me, that's been one of the things that helped keep me sane, and that getting away from the keyboard
Yeah.
definitely helps keep me disconnected from work off hours. So I have a little more of that balance. And it's just more enjoyable.
Yeah. Have you seen the new Halo show?
No.
Yeah, so check
Which
that out with your
platform?
son. Yeah, because like that's Xbox, right? Yeah, and so check that out. It was actually pretty good. Enjoyed it.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I totally get you there. There's a dog park. Congrats on getting Sabrina, by the way. She's a senior dog too, right?
She's 4.5.
Oh, really? I thought she was older than that.
She's got a little gray,
Yeah.
but it might be white. Tough to
Okay.
tell.
Okay. So then you have just the two?
Yep.
Okay. There's a dog park that just opened up next to, or pretty close to me. It's actually a dog bar. And so then they have a dog park, and then they also have like a bar built on. And so then it's supposed to be like a Cheers environment, you know? So then you go and you hang out, and they have you have a drink, the dogs play with each other, whatever. Everything's closed in. It's kind of a nice atmosphere. So then that's been a little bit of the community building that I've been doing as well. So same-ish thing, hanging out with my dog and then others, but then also having a chance to kind of connect and talk about things that are not, CRM or automation or business analysis.
When you have a dog like Zeus, I can understand that.
He's the
energetic.
best. He's chill. All right. So looking through, I don't see a whole lot of commentary or confessions. So I think we might even skip the hotline and the confessions segment portion of the evening, just because.
Actually, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Maybe it's relevant.
Okay.
So I wrote this one down ahead of time.
Okay. Confession or hotline?
We'll see. So when you did the promo for the show,
Mm-hmm.
you said no was the shortest sentence.
Yes.
So it's often easier said than done.
Correct.
And how have you learned to assertively say no in both your professional and personal life? And what impact has it had on your overall well-being?
Well, hold on one second.
Maybe I should start. Have you ever said no?
Hold on one second.
Let's eavesdrop on the BA hotline and see what provocative project problems are awaiting us. Is your project in hot water? Operators are standing by. Ooh, that's hot.
All right. Welcome to the hotline. So, Steve, can you go ahead and ask your question one more time?
Absolutely. So in the prep for the show, you said no is the shortest sentence in the English language. Have you ever actually, more recently, said no professionally or personally to something that needed to be done? And if so, what kind of impact has it had on your overall well-being?
Yeah. So there's some nonprofits that I work with, and I had one that had requested some work and said, "Hey, can you have this done by a certain date?" And I hadn't had a chance to connect with them on a one-to-one basis in a while, so I thought that things were headed in a different direction, and I was like, "Wait, hold on, what's going on here?" And so at that point, I said, not only to say no, I think I said I'm going to step back from engagement. So like I did kind of both things. I stepped back from that. I also had a chance to say this is not something that I'm looking to do right now. Not only because I don't have the time, but also because it's not. Like I don't feel involved. I don't feel included. Et cetera. So that's off the top of my head the first thing that I was able to say no on. But there's been a lot of things that I'm trying to collectively look at and say, I understand why I'm doing this. I'm doing this for a purpose because this is getting me closer to this other goal or etc. So while I'm not saying no, I'm not overly advertising certain aspects of the things that I do. Does that help clarify it?
Yes,
So I'm not going out there and saying, hey, everybody, reach out to me for all of this stuff because I can do this. I'm looking at certain opportunities and saying, I'm pursuing this other thing, I'm pursuing this over here, because that to me is where I'm trying to take things overall. So on top of that, I've also kind of stepped back a little bit from some of the speaking engagements that I had been planning. And so I've got one coming up in Chicago. So I'll be keynoting the Project World Business Analyst World conference there in Chicago in
Keynote.
November.
Fantastic.
December, which will be great. And I'm excited about that. But other than that, I had to step away a little bit just for myself so that I can focus on things that are dedicated to what I'm doing.
So setting boundaries.
Yeah. I had been doing some consulting work previously. I was subcontracting through another company. And even then I was doing things that, while they pertain to business analysis, they didn't pertain to the focus on my, I guess, overall career. So the whole Microsoft Power Platform, automation, AI, like that kind of stuff, it focused more on doing business analysis. And while I can do that, that's not where I think my skills shine. I think that there are people like you that do business analysis way better than I do. And I wouldn't ever like compete against someone. Like, it's like, hey, Steve's got this. Steve knows. Like, I know how it works for this, and I can help coach on overall building, better practices, but not necessarily like the day to day where he's going to lead the project. Let Steve lead. I'll come in here because I want to do tailored, targeted, focused work on a certain area.
Right.
So I think that rambling may have answered your question.
It did.
Okay.
It definitely did.
What about you?
Saying no. I still struggle with that. Although I have similar where I've decided I'm not going to volunteer as much. Stepping back a little bit, still trying to do a lot of things, but
Yeah.
doing them in a different way, trying to encourage others to step up.
And I think that's okay. Volunteer fatigue is a definite issue on its own, where people, the same volunteers are the same people that are leading this and doing the day to day and it's hard to find people either in an organization like a professional organization or in something that's like geared towards nonprofit. It's hard to find people that are willing to not only show up but also commit to showing up more and more and more.
And to put a little more effort in besides showing up.
Like, I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you like those events, you want to be able to do more things, but fewer people are taking the effort to organize, plan, coordinate. That's more stress, more effort, because if you want to get something done, in some instances, you got to do it yourself, and that gets tiring, even for something that's enjoyable.
Yeah, and I really feel like there's a benefit in, yes, you can do certain things yourself, and we know several of the same people, and we talked a little bit about that in previous conversations, where it's like you've got, I'm good at this one thing, but somebody else is really good at this other thing. I can pay that person to go do that one thing, and then now that saves me the headache of learning that, spinning up on that, doing that context switch, etc. And I feel like outsourcing some of those items that you can, if you're able to, is one of the ways that you can go in and just earn some time back. So it's like, well, you know what? This doesn't have to be me who does this. It can be somebody else, and let them do it. And then I can just enhance what I need to enhance if I do at all.
So it's a sanity saver.
Can be, it depends on the individual. So like we've all been in that situation where we give it to maybe somebody junior or somebody different, and then they didn't have the same outlook on the project as we did. And so we get something back that is going to take twice as long to undo or redo, you know, there's those elements, but it goes back to your communication workshop. So if that's the case, then see Steve and Jen, they have a workshop for you. But setting that up where here's what I expect, here's what I'm telling you I expect. Did you hear what I just expected? I said I expected, you know, and then hearing their response, and then if they come back with the exact same thing, then you're probably all right.
Yeah, and expectations for the outcome.
Right.
So with my staff, I let them know expectations for the outcome. I might give them ideas on how I might approach it, but I also say I don't expect you to do it this way. If you want help, I can give that to you, but see what you can do. If you do it a different way, that's okay. Here's the end result that I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the measurements of a good manager is someone that can say, I expect these 9 things of X quality at the end of this project or this deliverable. And if they deliver that, however they did it, doesn't necessarily make, like, I don't care if they delivered it when they needed to, and it was all those things. Great. I think that there's so many people that focus on you have to do it this way every single time, and they focus on the how more so than the what was delivered, that, you know, it just doesn't get us a whole lot of places.
And that's the beauty of having your own personal retrospective. Evaluate, take a look at what's happened. So I've had lots of managers in the past that micromanaged or just took an awful way to do things with their staff. So I've reflected and learned a lot of things of what I really hated. So when I talk to my team, sometimes I'll tell them, this is an experience that I had. This is what I'm telling you. Which makes more sense for you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want this strict guidance, or do you want a little help, a little nudge, or do you want to just know what the end result should be, as far as work getting done, and you find your path to get it done? What works for you? And sometimes I've just had those conversations. Say, does it help when I let you know a different way that I could be approaching this for you? And usually it's yeah, because most people do not like to be micromanaged. A lot of people don't like being told, do it this way and this way and this way, and you have to have this and this and this. Don't forget this.
I had one deliverable that I was working for somebody, and I think I redid it 4 or 5 times within, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. And by that 5th time, I was so done. I was like, I think I'm done with this entire company. I don't even think that I'm done with this project. I think I'm done just working here. And it was a weird realization, but it was one of those things that if you wanted it this way, the amount of coaching and effort that it took for you to tell me that, you could have done it yourself in that time frame. And like, are you teaching me something? Am I not learning? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around what the whole lesson was, and I was still frustrated with that. But I absolutely hate redoing work. It's the one thing that, you know, immediately sets me off, where why am I redoing this? Why is this happening? And how can I never redo this again? And yeah, like, that was to do it 4 or 5 times. Lost my mind. Absolutely lost my mind.
And those instances definitely contribute to burnout and
Yes.
force people into a coping mechanism. Sometimes that coping mechanism is saying goodbye.
You know, and I look at work a lot as like a relationship, and you still carry the baggage of every previous job you ever had to the next job. And so then when you're there the next time, you're like, oh, this is great. They don't do this and this and this. But at the same time, you haven't realized that long enough to go, oh, they do this and this. And is that better or worse? But it's funny looking at the relationship between the two, like a relationship and a job, and finding the similarities, because I feel like it's almost identical.
Yeah. And when you talked about baggage, I'm thinking back to our conversation with Nash a while ago. Even employees in the company have their own baggage. So when we're onboarding somebody new in our department, that's one of the things that we tell them. If you have trouble finding something, then we didn't do a very good job of having the right words in there for newer people. So you
Right.
got yourself a project that will help us all by, first we'll find out what it is that you're looking for, point you to it, and then we're going to ask you to kind of help redesign what information is included there so it can be found by someone who doesn't have all the contextual baggage of people who have been here. Because I might be able to find it in 30 seconds, but really you should be the one that needs to be able to find it in 30 seconds,
Right.
not me. So we didn't do a good enough job getting that information in a way that's easily findable. So for us, onboarding is a 3 to 6 month process. It's funny when people say, oh, I want to hit the ground running. Whoa, no. We want you to hit the ground crawling, then walking, then running, because it takes time. We know that.
Yeah. I feel like in that case, what they're really saying is, I want to be valued and I want to be valuable.
Yep.
And that's what they're saying. And understanding that it's going to take 6 months for them to be, good. But like what everybody starting a new job, they hear that, they go, I want to hit the ground running. Like I actually want to show that I can do something and show my skills, etc., in a way that I can be successful.
Yep. And the way that we temper that is because of our baggage and the way that information is organized. The value that you can provide is by helping us become better for people that are just starting. And that will help everybody be better.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you opportunity to learn, interact with other people in the department to gain the information. So it's trying to make sure that there's not a reliance on just one person.
Yep.
That project now becomes opportunity to expand your comfort zone with other people in the group, and hopefully that makes better connections, and those connections should help make the days better and make burnout less of an issue. Hopefully that's the intent.
It is the intent. So I think with that, it's last call, Steve. So first of all, welcome back. This is a lot of fun. And this is our first time just, I think, chatting one-on-one, right? We've had a chance to do this just by ourselves. So I'm looking forward to our next guest. So in 2 weeks, we are back on a schedule, everybody. So in 2 weeks, we have Amy Ikowski, and we met her on the speaking circuit as well. She's fantastic, owns her own company, and does a lot of leadership and just analysis PM training. So it's great. So I'm looking forward to talking to her.
I am too. It's going to be a good time.
Yep. So with that, everybody, this is the end of our evening. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Analysts After Dark, reminding you to stay curious
and stay positive.
Thanks.